What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. I'm the site editor over at Dairyland Express, where we cover the Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and Badgers. I also have a new article out every Monday and Friday over at Cheesehead TV. And as it says at the bottom of the screen here, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So here we are. It is the bye week, but also the college football season is getting close to the finish line. There's some conference championship games left, and then we're into bowl season. But at this point, a majority of those games have been played. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity to do a mock draft roundup and takeaways. This is an article that I post over at Dairyland Express periodically throughout the year. Obviously, as we get closer to the draft itself, these ramp up. But what they are is me going and finding 5, 6, 7 mock drafts that are out there, obviously sharing the name of the draft analyst, the pick that they made for Green Bay, their reasoning for the selection, and then I give my thoughts on that as well. So I posted one over at Dairyland Express on Thursday. So I thought for today's video, we would dive into my thoughts on each of those selections. Now I'll add, I haven't sat and grinded the tape and watched these players. That's for after the Green Bay Packers season. So I'll share some little nuggets about them, some stats, some numbers to know, but more so my thoughts are going to be based around the position and the overall fit for this Green Bay Packers team. So it's going to be much more Packers specific and the needs that they have more so than the prospects, because as I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've sat and watched, numerous games for each of those players. But let's dive in. So the first one is from Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports. He has the Green Bay Packers at pick 30, taking Treylon Burks, wide receiver from Arkansas. So again, the Green Bay Packers are mocked a wide receiver, something that's been done in mock drafts for years now, as everyone wants Green Bay to take a receiver in round one. While in years past, I would normally balk at that. This year, I think there's a very real possibility that it's going to happen because right now they just do not have many guys under contract. The only receivers on the roster who are under contract beyond 2021 are Amari Rodgers, who they just drafted last year in the third round, and Randall Cobb. But when it comes to Randall Cobb, I think that they're going to cut him, choose the cap savings that come with that move over rostering him again for the 2022 season. So if it plays out that way, Green Bay has just one receiver on the roster, but even if they did decide to keep Cobb, that's only 2 at this time. Now, of course, there's still an extension possible for Devontae Adams. Same for MVS. He's in his final season. They could extend him or sign him once free agency opens. Allen Lazard, he's a restricted free agent, so there's the very, very, very strong likelihood that he will be back. However, technically he is a free agent. But either way, this is going to need to be a position that the Green Bay Packers do address. And depending on what happens with Devontae and MVS, it absolutely could be a need in round one. So between now and the draft, we are going to, again, it's tradition for us Packer fans. We're going to see a lot of mock drafts with the wide receiver position being taken in round one. But unlike years past, it is very much more in play than what it has been. Burks, he's 6'3", 223 pounds. The Packers, Brian Gutekunst, just the history, or going back to Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, they love these big-bodied receivers. Typically, the threshold is 6 foot, 200 pounds. Now, Amari Rodgers did break that threshold because he doesn't meet that height requirement. But typically, that is the type of receiver that Green Bay covets. So Treylon Burks, absolutely within that range. They love those big bodies. He has 211 targets over his 3 years. This season in particular, he's been targeted 88 times, caught 74% of those passes, almost 17 yards per catch with 11 touchdowns. And although he's a big-bodied receiver for much of his college career at Arkansas, he's done his damage from the slot. So he's been much more of a slot threat than on the boundary. Next up, Ryan Wilson, also of CBS Sports. At pick 30, he has the Green Bay Packers taking DeMarvin Leal, an interior defensive lineman. So we all know the mantra here in Green Bay, get Kenny Clark some help. Well, Kenny Clark's actually had some help this year. Dean Lowry, he has been really since the Niners game, week 3. He's been on a bit of a tear, putting together his best season in some time. And you know that Dean's playing really well because just given what he's asked to do, or has been asked to do in the past, he's not someone who's going to show up in the stat sheet. He does the dirty work, eats up double teams, occupies space, creates for his teammates. But he's playing so well that he is showing up on the stat sheet. He's logging sacks. He's logging pressures. And in most games, or in many of the games, there's been a pass rush rep or two where you see him just bully his way through the middle. Kingsley Kiki, still up and down, but there have been some really, really nice complete game performances that he's strung together. TJ Slayton, Tyler Lancaster, they've had some flashes as well. So overall, this unit is playing much better. And then, of course, Kenny Clark, he's playing at an all-pro level this season. He is just a one-man wrecking crew on that interior defensive line. But although the play from the others around Clark is certainly elevated this year, and we're seeing it with the results on the field, Green Bay plays with light box very often in this Joe Barry defense, which means more defenders in the secondary to try to take away the passing game and basically telling the opponent, we dare you to run the ball. And for the most part, they've done a good job of containing that running game. They still haven't given up a 100-yard rusher this season. And unlike in years past, we just haven't seen them be dominated by the opponent on the ground. So again, they're playing very well. But with that said, all of those players mentioned, except for Clark, of course, they're limited. They are limited in what their ceiling is. Also, Lowry, this could be his last year. And an interior defensive line is one of those positions where you can just never have too much depth. So if they were to take Leal, or if there's another prospect that ends up coming up in this range that they like, absolutely on board with that position selection. Leal, this last 2 seasons, he's recorded 69 pressures according to Pro Football Focus. He has 13 sacks. 8.5 of those sacks have come in 2021. He also has 19.5 career tackles for loss, with 12.5 coming this season as well. Next up, this mock draft from Brandon Coyle of Sports Illustrated. At pick 30, he is the Packers taking Drake Jackson, edge rusher from USC. Edge rusher is absolutely a position that Green Bay is likely going to have to address next season. We know they have Rashawn Gary, but after that, it's a whole lot of question marks. Jonathan Garvin, Tipa will be back. But Za'Darius, we don't know what his future holds beyond 2021. Preston Smith, same thing. We don't know what his future holds either. There's a very real possibility that both of those players are not Green Bay Packers in 2022. And edge rusher is absolutely a position that is going to have to be addressed. And of the positions that they could take in round one, not knowing who's going to be available at that time, but just going strictly by positions, I think edge rusher might be my top one at this time, just given how big of a need that could be. But Jackson, he's been a 3-year starter, 3-year contributor for USC. He's got 69 pressures during that span, 13 sacks, and 25 tackles for loss. He's also graded out very well as a run defender by Pro Football Focus's metrics as well. 2 more. Next up is Joe Moreno from the Draft Network. He has Green Bay, once again at pick 30, taking Thayer Munford, interior offensive lineman from Ohio State. Now, something that I've written about, especially this last draft cycle, was the value of the position and the positions that Green Bay really covets in round one. Well, historically, interior offensive lineman is not one of them. For starters, they've had a lot of success at taking tackles on day 3 of the draft. Also, just look at Royce Newman, but also they've spent a decent amount of draft capital on the interior offensive line in recent years. There's Jake Hansen, Simon Stepaniak. I know he retired. John Runyon, Royce Newman, Cole Van Lanen. Again, those are all likely interior offensive linemen, even though Van Lanen and Newman, they were tackles, but those are all players who can contribute along the interior offensive line. So for those reasons, I am very skeptical when I see a mock draft having the Green Bay Packers taking an interior offensive lineman in round 1. Now, when it comes to Munford, is he a true interior offensive lineman? This is his 5th year at Ohio State, and for 4 of them, he's been a starter. From 2018 to 2020, he actually started at left tackle for the Buckeyes, and in 2020, the shortened college football season, he was actually Pro Football Focus's 4th highest graded tackle in the country. So had a very good season there. But 2021, he's been playing at guard, where he's allowed 1 sack and 15 pressures. So the question is, why did he switch to guard? And if Green Bay, and a lot of this is going to be dependent upon how does he test athletically at the combine. There's a big difference athletically between an offensive tackle and a guard. If he tests extremely well, if the Green Bay Packers view him as someone who can play either, because we do know that they love that flexibility along the offensive line, then I'm not so quickly to dismiss this selection. But if he doesn't test well, or he's viewed strictly as a guard, again, the Packers just do not value an interior offensive lineman in the first round. So that's where I have my hesitation with this selection. Last up, Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Pick 30, he has Green Bay taking Darian Kinnard, offensive tackle from Kentucky. So Kinnard is a big individual, 6'5", 345 pounds. He's been a 3-year starter for the Wildcats at right tackle. And during that span, those entire 3 years, he's allowed 30 pressures, just 7 sacks, and has been called for only 5 penalties and almost 1,000 pass blocking snaps. He has almost 2,500 career snaps along the offensive line. And I think that's something that's really important when we're looking at these prospects. How much experience do they have? I think that at times can be something that's overlooked in in just the general draft process that a lot of us go through. But I think that's a very important aspect. How much experience does the player that you're selecting have? Because a lot of times that tells you how quickly they can come in and be a key contributor. And when it comes to Kennard, the last 3 seasons for Kentucky, so his entire 3 years as a starter at Kentucky, he's been in Pro Football Focus's top 10 graded tackles, including in the top 5 in 2020 and 2021. So when it comes to college football tackles, he's experienced, and when it comes to his play, he's, by Pro Football Focus metrics, that is, he's been one of the best in the game. Offensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers. Again, this is a position where I am never going to complain about the Green Bay Packers adding depth. Offensive tackle is such a key position in the NFL. We know at left tackle, David Bakhtiari is going to be holding that position down for the next few years. For right tackle, there are some question marks. Billy Turner, 2022 is the last year of his current contract. I believe that if Green Bay did want to move on from him, not advocating that whatsoever, because Turner has been rock solid for Green Bay at right tackle. But if they did move on from him this coming offseason, I believe there would be some cap savings. However, he's also an extension candidate as well, just because he's been that good. And then what about Josh Neyman? He's been, taking over at left tackle in Bakhtiari's absence, Elton Jenkins' absence. But how does Green Bay view him in the long term? Is he a possible future starter at right tackle? If so, then maybe, looking ahead to the 2022 draft, right tackle might not be, or tackle in general, might not be a position that's high up on Green Bay's radar when it comes to, selecting one in the first round. It really comes down to those two big questions. What does Billy Turner's future look like? And what do the Green Bay Packers see Josh's role being moving forward with this team? But as I mentioned, this is a very key position in the game of football. I'm always going to advocate for adding to the offensive line, and we're seeing why this season. They've suffered a number of injuries, Green Bay has, along the offensive line. They've been playing musical chairs, but this unit is still holding up very well. So there you have it. Just wanted to run through a quick handful of those mock drafts. Again, you can find the full article over at Dairyland Express. Now, once we start getting into December, January, even though the NFL season's going on, I'm going to start putting these out a little more frequently, maybe 1 or 2 a month moving forward. And then once we get to February, March, April, obviously, we'll really ramp those up. But be sure to check those out. Find my work at Dairyland Express. Find at Cheesehead DV. Find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. As always, everyone, I appreciate you joining me. I do greatly appreciate it. As always, take care, stay safe, and go Pack, go.